Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Kitchen talk. Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Kitchen talk. Let's talk. Conversations that cool. Kitchen talk. Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Kitchen talk. Let's talk. Conversations that cool. Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Let's talk. What you wanna talk about?
All right. Hey. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Welcome to Kitchen Talk CTC. They are conversations that cook, and that is what we are here to do tonight, which look like Pastor D is you and me again, but hey,
Let's
we're
do
gonna
this.
make it do
Let's
what it
do it.
do. I think
Let's
we'll
do
be
it.
all right.
Let's do it.
So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate you. Um,
Absolutely.
so of course, whenever you come, we got to talk about this politics stuff. And as much as I, oh, hate is such a strong word. It's a really strong word.
But an
I,
honest feeling.
I just don't like these politics. I just don't like it. I do not like and I'm trying to be a responsible adult and do my part and do
Good.
my part trying to be informed. But every time I feel like I don't even need ankle high boots no more. I need some thigh high boots. It's just, but
Yep.
you know what? I found some inspiration that I want to share with us. So hold on one second. Okay.
No, I don't mind vote.
Yes.
Yes, I think it's important. You know, see, I'm 100 years old, and a long time ago, we didn't, black folks didn't do any voting or something like that. And it was sounding funny then. Got to go vote. But it's all right now. Ever since I'm like people vote, I've been voting. And so if somebody gonna bring me, I'm gonna have a chance to vote.
Wow.
Inspiration.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
100 years old.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of the deacons at my church, and we talk about, a lot of stuff, and he watches the show every now and then. And I was like, yeah, we always do a voting show. And he was telling me this is his aunt.
Oh wow. Look
This
at
is
that.
his aunt. And this was the 2020 election. Of course, you saw the mask, so you knew we were
Yeah.
in COVID. Um, I think she is still living, which would make her almost 104 if she's not right there
Wow.
right
Wow.
now. And I was like, you know what? If she still want to vote,
Gotta press our way.
we
Hmm.
really. And I was like, okay, Lisa, you just gotta, we gotta do what we gotta do.
Yep.
We got to do what we got to do. And I think that especially having these conversations has helped me in the fact that I'm not just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go vote. But now I want to know. I want to be more informed. I want to make sure I'm making good sound decisions.
Yeah.
But I will also say it is hard to make good sound decisions with the craziness that's going on.
Yeah.
It just it, I don't I have I'm really Pastor D, I don't know if I need your political side or your spiritual side. I might need prayer more than politics.
That may be true. That may be true for all of us, honestly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what keeps you kind of focused and encouraging in the politic arena and in helping others kind of stay there?
That's a great question. And so allow me to first say that
Oh, that's my
I get
deacon. He
I
said,
get
yes, she
discouraged.
is
Or
still
says,
living.
yeah, she's still living. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
wonderful.
I get discouraged as well. I mean, that more than probably I admit. You know, we are reliving 2020 again, right? We literally are reliving the same candidates, almost the same fights. Our country is seemingly in the same position it was 4 years ago, and it's quite interesting. I mean, I've heard people say that you never could have told them that Trump would be the Republican nominee in 2024. I'm not in that camp. I thought I picked him to be the nominee, and mainly because you could see how the world was and the loyalists, right? That loyalty wasn't going to go away after one election.
Mm,
Um, his loyalists are loyal to death, as I would argue, and so it can be
mm,
discouraging because our country and even sometimes even our state, we're fighting about things that um, everything is polarizing.
mm,
Everything is polarizing. The simplest things are now becoming battles, right? Whether we're talking about books, whether we're talking about um, political ideology, you even seeing battles even within the church, right? You have the evangelicals who are all in on one side. Like you're seeing all these things that can be very discouraging because at the end of the day, I remember growing up where the beacon of hope in the community was the church, and now what I see a lot of times is people have allowed their political affiliation to dictate their Christian faith versus the other way around.
mm,
Or the other way around. If you are deemed to be liberal, then you really aren't saved. That's people's mindsets, and the more conservative you are, the more saved you are. We've now starting to argue that God is a Republican or God's a Democrat. Like these things are taking place, and it is interesting that people will be so bold and so audacious to even come to that conclusion. But that's the times that we're in. And then what's happening is because it's so polarizing. You think about younger generations like my son, who's 18. They've all but surmised that it's not even worth registering to vote. It's not even worth getting involved in the political
oh my,
process. Why
yeah, yeah.
why vote? Why it's not going to change things of that nature. Now my son is registered to vote, and I talk to him about voting, but his generation has, and probably the one up ahead of him, but after his generation, they most of them have concluded um, that it's a waste of time, and it's just interesting to see that because of the polarization. I have argued this point many times, Lisa, and I'll argue it on the show tonight that what we're seeing is not it, we won't see the shifting or the turning of what we're seeing as far as polarization until probably my grandchildren's generation.
Mm,
And that's the dynamic of what we're seeing, right? You don't see this level of polarization and loyalty shift because of one or two incidents. Because honestly, if that were true, you would have seen that shifting take place when President Trump lost in 2020. And actually, it seemed like they became more emboldened, and the more indicted he more indictments he received, the more loyal they became, right? And like you're seeing that even more. And then you factor in things where there are voters out there who are very nervous about um, about Biden and his health and his age. But there are Democrats I know who are worried about not Biden. They're worried about a Kamala Harris presidency.
Right.
They fear more of her than anything else. Like all
Right.
of these things are out there, dynamics, and I would even submit to you, I'm starting to see this national political polarization spewing into our state and even to our local stuff. Where now city and county commissions are bickering. School board meetings are now becoming more polarizing and things of that nature. We're in a time that is not going to shift overnight. And but I'm going to always be an advocate for voting. Vote, 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 vote. Um, Even when people feel like their vote don't matter, vote. The video you showed at the very beginning, if you need any reason, it's that 100 years old, now 104, close to 104, but 100 years old, and she's still exercising her right to vote because you have to recall the fight and the labor that our foreparents endured for this right, and we have to press
Yeah.
through that. We have to press
Yeah.
through.
And she lived that.
Yeah, she lived that.
She
Correct.
lived that. So yeah, whereas we hear about it, we didn't
Yeah,
live it.
correct.
So for us, it's like, oh, if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
But that when I saw the video, I was like, yeah, this says, Lisa, you need to really, you got
Hmm.
to still do it. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
gonna do it, but it gave me a little something
yeah.
extra. So I guess my thing is, oh, here's a question. So, um,
Man, out the gate, out the gate, out the gate.
so even with this question right here, and I know what's done is done. He did 4 years, but I still have trouble wrapping my mind around this major party backing
Hmm.
a Trump.
Hmm. Hmm.
So is he really the best that they could do, or are they just like, I don't? In some ways, okay, you know how people can be geniuses, but they use their genius for evil and not for
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
So I don't know whether the Republicans are geniuses and they got strategy other that that somehow plays out with this man. So are they just evil geniuses, or are they really not paying attention? Or I mean, what is it?
I will say several things on that. So amazing question, and out the gate. So this is going to be a fun night, which I appreciate honestly.
Absolutely.
So 2016, when there were almost 17 Republican nominees, there was a lot of momentum and excitement about Jeb Bush's candidacy. And Jeb Bush came out the gate, and other than just the fanfare and excitement leading up to it, once Governor Bush announced, you never really saw any momentum really propel him beyond the excitement that happened prior to him announcing. And I was in a conversation with someone, and that person said, "You know, it's bad when people are questioning Jeb Bush's Republican credentials." Right? The guy who used to be the face of the Republican Party of Florida
Mhm.
is now being questioned as being, is he Republican enough? I made a comment to somebody a couple weeks ago that President Ronald Reagan would not be elected a Republican in today's times. And I mean that, right? There was a point when Ronald Reagan, it was the party of Reagan, where literally you were running as a Republican, you were reciting Reagan and using some of Reagan quotes to really show people that was the standard you were trying to live up to show people how serious a Republican you are. What I think people are making the mistake at, Lisa, and I'm gonna lead into the question that was asked. I think people making the mistake of people continue to think that it's a Democratic Party versus a Republican Party. On
Mhm.
paper, that's true, but in reality, that's not true, right? You may have a Democratic Party, but the Republican Party really is the party of Trump, right? And so either you are a
Mhm.
Trump Republican or you are not. It's really what comes down to that. And I think people need to accept that, right? So to answer that question directly, is he the best they have to offer? Based on platform, based on political expedience, based on knowledge of the process, based on governance, I would argue no, right? I would argue that the better candidates actually would have been Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. If you want to look at it from a standpoint of um, as far as like really having led states, really understanding the process, really having a clear plan of action, those two would have been better candidates, just based on just their resumes. However, with the two of them and really hadn't done a really good had done a job of is number one, I think neither one of them really took seriously the loyalists behind President Trump. Right? I think they assumed because he lost in 2020 that his supporters from 2020 and what to happen on January 6th, they were no longer going to be loyal to President Trump. And I think by the time they realized their loyalty was cemented for him, they were already fully in the game and was never able to penetrate. I'll go a little bit further than that. The Trump lawyers are loyal that they deem DeSantis and even Haley as being disloyal for running against Trump, right?
Mm,
And so
mhm.
you have that, um, and so this isn't this to me is there's a few things, right? Yeah, the argument is who's better for the country, but really what it comes down to is for a lot of people, the loyalists, they look at it as um, we were robbed in 2020. So basically, we're setting the record straight in 2024, right?
Okay.
If we hadn't been robbed in 2020, then President Trump would been ending his second term as president.
And we would have been fine with
Now,
that. They would be
yeah,
fine.
but because they feel like he was robbed and hold out to the day that the election was stolen, then it was only right that he gets a second chance to have another term or two now. And that's that reality. And so they'll tell a Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis and others, wait your turn. You're young enough, come back later. Because if Trump were to win, he may only do one term, right? So then in 2028, you have a open ticket in that regard. And so on the surface, I don't think he's the best Republicans have to offer, basically from a standpoint of the face and future of the party. But the fact of the matter is number one, they look at Trump as an incumbent candidate. Republicans do, right? He was president for 4 years, so they know what to expect. They know how he leads in that regard. It's like they know what Biden does, and so you're not voting for someone that you hope or assume will do something. Trump actually has a voting record. He actually has a running record. He actually has 4 years where he can point to as president in comparison to Biden's 4 years. Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and the others, they're all saying what they would do if they became president. Trump is saying, this is what I did when I was president. And that
Mhm.
really does matter. And so now what people are doing, they're literally comparing the two presidencies and saying, under which one were we better, right? And so
Mhm.
now here's the question that Trump is going to be asking the voters at some point soon. It's the same question Ronald Reagan asked the country back when he beat Jimmy Carter, which is, are you better off 4 years later? And the American people back then said, we're not, which is why they voted for Ronald Reagan. That question is going to be posed at some point or another before November election. And based on how you look at it, it could be inflation, it could be a lot of things people look at in that regard. And so, you know, I never believed Nikki Haley had a serious chance,
Mhm.
and I'll come back to that later if we have time. Well, I knew Governor DeSantis was going to run. Um, I figured he was running too soon because I just believed that the Trump loyalists were going to make sure he had one more chance, and I think everybody took for granted what that looks like and how loyal they are, and that loyalty is deep and people are willing to sacrifice their lives. Now,
Sacrifice life.
yeah, 2016. The one thing that, and I'll end at this point and let us move on with the show, but I think people need to remember this: what President Trump uh, did in 2016. Forget about him winning. What he did was he allowed for and even awakened a people who had been silenced by the world, whether you deem them to be racist, whether you deem them to be whatever, he awakened them and gave them a voice. And now they have a voice that they reclaim. They're not giving that voice back. And so as long as President Trump is out there, they feel like they have their voice is able to be heard even the more. And that's the thing that people need to realize is you awaken the people that have been silenced for so long, and now they are emboldened because they have a leader they look to who is helping them be emboldened,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're seeing that even the more. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is no longer about public policy. It's no longer about governance, right? Not about that. This is about a dominance, and I won't say dictatorship, but it's about a dominance.
It's about
And
a
this is not.
dictatorship
Yeah, okay, well, I'll
because
let you say. Yeah, I'll let you say it. But yeah, I mean, look at things in comparisons, right?
I mean,
You
just the
know,
way
it's
he was in office, like he did whatever he wanted to do.
yeah, yeah,
So even when President Obama was in office and you wield the power of the pen, he didn't necessarily take advantage of that. Whereas Trump was like, oh, well, if I want this, it's an executive order. It's an
yeah,
executive order. It's an executive
yeah,
order.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. So we got another question.
Okay.
Uh do we think we and
I
then
love this question.
hold on, there's another response. He says the reason I asked the question, it seems like the election of Obama swung one direction and this country was not. Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I will say on this, and I'll bring in my Nikki Haley comment I was going to make. So our country prior to President Obama had never had a black or a woman as president.
right.
We've since had a black president. I mean, to the
Hold
point
on,
where the
hold
joke.
on, hold on. Wasn't it like I'm not the biggest history person, but I feel like I read somewhere that did we have one black president before Obama?
We did not. We had black
Never.
nominees, like we had black candidates, right? But
Yeah, I
as
knew
far as
that.
actual,
I was just
as far as
thinking about
actual,
like the olden. Maybe it was something else I saw. Okay.
but I will tell you. So Obama wins, and you now can check the box that we've had a black president. Our country, um, I don't think will ever, or probably is ready, will ever let a woman become president. Right? I look at it even in Florida. Florida's never had a black governor or a female governor. And we both times you've been close. You had Alex Sink get close, and you had Andrew Gillum get close, and both times neither have. Now, Gary, you can argue many reasons why that never happened, but the fact of the matter is
Mhm.
that still remains to be true. So when you look at Obama, Obama, Obama was told by his own party at one point, "Don't run now. Wait your turn. This is Hillary's turn." And he felt a call to run. He felt like it was his time. And he ran and he won. But if you remember a few things, number one, there was a major push by his former congressional colleagues to render him as useless as possible. They did not
Mhm.
want to help him
Mhm.
be successful,
Mhm.
right? I think also because a black man occupied the office, black people put all their hopes and dreams behind President Obama to be able to right the wrong. And here is where I would argue the ignorance of how politics work, because we tend to forget that presidents, governors, and mayors don't don't pass laws, right? Like, so with the president, no matter what hope and dream you have, at the end of the day, Congress are the ones that do everything. And so, even with an executive order, for the most part, you can challenge that in court and actually win against an executive
Mhm.
order. And so, we put a lot of hopes and dreams as a black people behind
Indeed.
Obama, and to the point where we never really realized or was told or believed that he can't do all of these things, can't do most of these things,
Right.
because he, unlike President George W. Bush, when President Bush became president, he had the Republicans ran the House and the Senate. So his first term, I don't think he had any bill. I don't think he vetoed one bill his first term because they were
Mhm.
all from his colleagues, right? Well, that wasn't Barack's story,
Mhm.
right? He didn't have the House and the Senate both being of Democrats, and so you have to work with these guys. And And you got to get things to get through on both ends, like things of that nature. And so, from our country perspective, I think once Barack finished those 8 years, they looked over the horizon and realized there's no one else in close proximity to as a minority that we need to be worried about becoming the next president, right? And so in
Mhm.
that regard, now it became almost right in front of our face an aggressive approach to make sure the country never had another minority even get close to being the president, right?
Mhm.
Especially not a minority of the opposing party become president in that regard. And it's a I feel like black people 2008, 2012, we saw historical turnout for votes. And once there was no longer Barack Obama on the ballot, some black people went back to sleep and said, I'm not voting anymore, right?
Yeah.
Before Obama, the big joke was that the first black president was Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
right? Because Bill Clinton smoked weed and,
Yeah.
he had the Monica
Play the
Lewinsky
saxophone.
situation, or play the saxophone, all that type of stuff, right? And so you saw people who thought that they would never see a black person occupy that office, and were at tears at the inauguration, be able to witness this transpire, and
Yeah.
that was great. But the reality of it all is I think Congress made it their point that once he termed out, they're going to make sure it can never happen again. Go a little bit further too. I always say this on the show. The thing that people got to remember too about elections is what the one of the major battles is for the courts. It's for the courts, right? Is the Supreme Court, right? And things of that nature. And so, um, I don't know if our country wasn't ready, but I definitely would tell you that I feel like Republicans definitely went back into the vault and then had private conversations on how can we make sure this never happens again. And they came out guns a blazing to make sure it never happens again, and do all they can while they can to make sure it
Yeah.
never happens again.
Well, and some of them were quite vocal when President Obama won. Like
Hmm.
we you knew,
Hmm.
and some of
Hmm.
them said,
Yeah,
we are not going to help him be
yeah,
successful at all.
correct, correct,
So
correct.
it's and I think that's the part that makes me have um fatigue is you're not concerned about me.
No, yeah,
I elected you, the people elected you, and you're not saying what's best for the country, what's best for the citizens. You're saying, I'm gonna make sure this person don't have a good term,
hmm,
even if their ideas help the people.
yeah, yeah,
That's the part that now I say instead of ankle boots, I need thigh boots to wade in this. But you want me to believe the stuff that come out of your mouth and vote for you.
hmm,
The two just don't compute for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, and that's not to say there aren't good people that run for office. There aren't, good-hearted folk that are in these places. But it seems the people that have the most power are not those people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This When you look at the leaders of our country, right? Whether you look at the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, the Majority Leader, Minority Leader in the Senate, the President, majority of them are in their upper 70s or 80s, right? Where they should be, one would argue they should be retired and at home enjoying retirement. They're still in positions, and what it is well, number one is power, right? They love the power, but it's the fear of once you relinquish that control, what happens next, right?
Mhm.
There was a real fear of, will Michelle Obama run for president,
Mm.
right? There's a real fear of Kamala Harris. If Biden wins a second term, will he finish the second term, or will she be sworn in as president? There's a real fear of that,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I would say even a fear. not just amongst Republicans, fears within Democrats themselves.
Hmm.
There are Democrats who are not fans of Kamala Harris, who are fearful of her being here. There are Democrats who would have loved for Biden not to have kept her on as his running mate, right? There were some who wanted Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, to be his running mate. There were people who wanted Gavin Newsom to run against Biden to make sure that Kamala didn't have a chance. That's really, really happening. And you're seeing what this looks like. There are Republicans who are very concerned about Trump being the nominee because they feel like Trump being the nominee, there could be Republicans who are not going to vote. They believe it's going to also awaken voters on the other side who probably wouldn't have voted, who are not going to show up to vote just to make sure he doesn't win. You're looking
Yeah.
at it right now in the fundraising. Biden has way more money than Trump has. Now, granted, now Trump's also using some of his money for his legal defense, but you're
Hmm.
seeing that people are, some have awakened, some are slowly awakening to the realization that this is a repeat from 2022, from 2020. And do we want to be in the game or not be in the game? Do we care what the outcome looks like in that regard? And it's interesting, but there are serious concerns about the sustainability of a President Biden presidency. What does that look like long term? No one knows that answer, but there is concerns about that. And I think
Yeah.
for the country, I've been asking this question at least for probably the last, I know, 10 if not 12 years. And I used to joke around and say it, now I seriously say it, which is, you mean to tell me in this country we can't find anyone in their 30s, 40s, or 50s to run for these offices and actually occupy these positions? Right? That we keep getting our president's candidates are upper 70s and over 80. That's literally what we have to provide to the people. And that's why voters get fatigued. That's why voters have no interest. They look and say, okay, this is the are you serious?
Yeah.
And it's like neither one of these people even relate to,
Yeah.
right, what I'm dealing with, what I'm going through. But it's an interesting situation. Let me say this. I may be getting early, but I want to say this before, in case I forget it. The reason why we have a President Joe Biden right now, people can argue all they want to argue against me. I can prove it through statistics. The reason why we have a President Joe Biden right now is not because of him being the most impressive candidate. We have a President Joe Biden because Black women voted for Joe Biden. And if you look at the breakdown of the voting block, Black women went heavily for Joe Biden, and Black men went for Trump. But Black women, if you look at the breakdown, and I'm not gonna say they went to Trump hard, but Black men, you're seeing way more Black men going behind Trump. But Black women went hard for Biden in 2020 for many reasons, right? For many reasons, things that he said, and part of Biden's battle is going to be, has he delivered on whatever he promised Black women in 2020? And
Yeah.
so he put a Black woman on the Supreme Court, okay, but has he delivered on everything else that he promised, that he made them believe he was going to do? That's why they got behind him. And if he can't carry Black women again, right, he's going to have a hard time winning in November. And that's a big deal, right? You can look at Black women when it comes to Ron DeSantis' first victory, right? He got a large percentage of Black women on one item, which was school choice. They flipped from voting Democrat as normal, voting for DeSantis over school choice, and that percentage breakdown made a difference in the outcome of that race. No matter what anybody says, it mattered. Black women may play a major role in these elections when they show interest. When they show interest, but when you don't deliver as you promise, Black women, they usually don't shift to the other side. They usually just disappear altogether. Like either they come fully in on for one, or they just disappear altogether. And Biden's going to have to answer the question of, have I delivered? And that's going to be one of the major questions. And answer to that question, I think it's going to have a major determination of what happens in November.
Mm. So I know I was watching this show called America in Black. It's
Mm,
on BT or TV1, one of them.
yeah.
And Common did an excerpt on there about pretty much don't sleep on Black women and they
I'm
voting
telling
power.
you. I'm telling you. He's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. I mean, if you look at the breakdown, Black women aren't the largest percentage of registered voters, but their voting block, when you look at it after an election, you see their impact is heavy.
Mm,
It's heavy. And that matter. And here's the thing: Republicans have traditionally not taken seriously black women.
mm-hmm.
They have not. They spend more time going after, um, the Cuban Hispanic voters, in that regard. And I get it, absolutely get it. But they ignored the black woman vote, because there was a time. Remember, there was a time where women, especially black women, weren't allowed to vote. They didn't have a voice in the voting process, and
Right,
so
right.
some people have a trained mind to not take seriously black women when it comes to voting, and I think they realize after the fact that
Yeah.
it's a problem to do that.
I mean, and he spoke a lot of truth too, not just because I'm a beautiful, strong black woman and I agree with everything he said. But I think I also thought about have you seen Shirley?
I have. I saw it recently.
Oh,
Yeah,
first of all, Regina King was fabulous.
yeah, she was.
She did an amazing job. But just the fact that she decided to run no matter what. And
Yeah, no
every
matter what.
time she got knocked down, it was like, nope, nope, let's go,
Yep,
let's go, let's go,
yep.
let's go. Until that last time. But it was a very interesting movie to watch, especially when you're not a historian. Like I'm
Yeah,
sure historians knew,
yeah, yeah.
everything that went on. But for people who don't, aren't in history like that, it was very interesting to watch.
But
And
you think about that movie though. I look at today's time. I mean, she battled both white Republican men who argued about one guy arguing about him having the same salary, to ultimately who turned on in the end was black men, right?
right.
Because again, they don't know how to handle the black woman in the political process. And it's a if you come in aggressive, then you're the angry black woman. You come in too passive, and they walk over you. So it's a thin line. And that movie is still, I think it's still relevant today based on how the political structure is in place. And
Absolutely.
you see that. You absolutely see that. And I could point to several elections where the black woman block was a major factor in a race, that and people just don't, and a lot of times after the fact they don't want to give credit to that, but it matters. It
Yeah.
absolutely matters.
Yeah. I think the thing too is, and I know this is not a political thing, it's more of a human nature kind of thing. I'm like, when are we going to get to the place where it's not about me being female or you being male? I'm an intelligent person that can do a job just like you can, or maybe even better.
Yeah,
But we never look at it in some arenas. We never look at it in that way. I mean, we're seeing this in everything now, even with the sports, where the women's championship game was
yeah,
the largest attended or watched or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
even over
yeah,
the men's game, and everybody's
yeah,
like, "Oh my God, I can't
yeah,
believe
yeah,
why?"
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the other thing, oh, let me get this question right here, and then I'm gonna get into my other thing because I might have to run for president. So, on the
Ooh, I like this one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So here you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Here you go.
yeah. So I will. So let's deal with. I'm so grateful for this question, because I try my best to make this point wherever I go and I give speeches. Um, National politics irritate us, but local politics affect us. And oftentimes we are so educated on the national presidential races that we're ignorant on what's happening in our local communities. So this question here is probably my favorite question that's going to be asked tonight, because I think it's so important to talk about local. So here in our area of Tallahassee and Leon County, we have a city commission and a county commission. Our city commission right now is made up of 5 people, because our mayor has equal voting power. His vote is no more powerful than the other commissioners, and almost every vote ends up 3-2. Not all, but most of them, right? Where it's three in the yay, two in the nay, and almost everything, and it's very contentious. And so now what you have two of our commissioners up for reelection. You have Commissioner Curtis Richardson, who is deemed to be the dean of the City Commission. Um, his opponent is Dot Inman Johnson, who
Mm.
was the first Black female mayor of the city, served for many years ago. She has filed a run against him. She's running against him, and so she's more progressive in her thinking, very well regarded and respected. Her name is well known. She is a very well versed on politics, especially locally. And so, if she were to win that race, that 3-2 may flip to be 3-2 the other way. So right now, the three usually is the mayor, Commissioner Richardson, and Commissioner Diane Williams Cox, and then the two are usually Commissioner Jeremy Matlow or Commissioner Jack Porter. If Diamond Johnson wins, it would flip the other way to 3-2. At least that's the assumption. But then also, Jack Porter is running for re-election, and she has two other people running. You have Pastor Rudy Ferguson is running against her, and then someone else got in the race, I think today, and I'm going blank on the name of that person, right? So this is really Jack Porter's. This is her first re-election. She's running for the first time for re-election, and they tell you in politics the time to strike against an incumbent is their very first election, their first re-election campaign.
Mm-hmm.
That's really going to go after them. And so, if she were to lose, right, the assumption is it becomes 4-1. And so those two races are hot button races. They're very hostile. The outcome of those races will matter again if Jack were to win re-election, but Richardson loses, right? You see a different dynamic that takes place. On the county commission, for the most part, I mean, there's bickering here or there, but not to the level of the city commission. And so I'm not monitoring as much as the county commission as to what's going on. They don't make the paper a lot for having a lot of dissension at their county commission meetings. Even if they don't get along, you really don't hear a lot about what's going on there. It doesn't spew out of maybe in their meetings into the streets like the city commission stuff does. But again, Curtis Richardson and Jack Porter, who are two incumbent city commissioners, are running for re-election against formidable opponents. And so these races should be heavily monitored, should be looked into, should be of interest of residents of the city of Tallahassee to know what their platforms are. I think that's critically important. And again, a lot of times city commission meetings, these are held at like 3 p.m. So they made 30 days. Most people aren't going to city commission meetings, right? So
Oh, yeah.
sometimes you don't even know what they're bickering about and what's going on. Their most recent city
Right.
commission meeting, they're putting in front of the voters whether or not they should double the salary of the commissioners times 2, right? That's something the voters are going to be able to vote upon, because they actually did a vote the other night to double their salaries. They have to come before the voters. So that's something important. Also,
No.
should they increase should they increase the number of commissioners on the city commission? Right. So Tallahassee has a weak mayoral system structure in comparison to like a Jacksonville, right? So our
Mm.
mayor is elected as mayor, but his vote is equal to the commissioner's vote, right? Whereas in Jacksonville, that mayor is elected as well, but that mayor works with the city council, but that mayor has power and has authority and things of that nature. In our city, the power really lies with the city manager, not with the mayor himself or herself. And so, in that regard, the city commission meetings become even more interesting and sometimes even egregious the way they go back and forth and bickering.
Wow.
And then again, another race I'll tell you, the other one is the superintendent. Thank you, Tracy. I better say that it's the superintendent race. So Rocky Hanna's running for re-election again. I think this actually will be Rocky's. If he were to win, it'd be his third term as superintendent. And then you have others who are running against him. So the principal of Childs High School is running against superintendent, basically running against his own boss, one could argue, but he's
Mm.
running for superintendent, in which I think, again, it's going to be a very interesting race. I think that principal has gotten frustrated with things that he's seeing. I wouldn't be surprised if there have been some parents who have um, advocated for and encouraged him to run against the mayor, right? Because they're against the superintendent, because the superintendent is deemed to be a very be progressive. He's not pro school choice, and so there are parents in this community who are very vocal about choice. You have Moms for Liberty and others who are very vocal, so they're trying to get persons to run for superintendent here to challenge Rocky Hanna and what they believe to be his control of our local school system. And so that race is also one of great importance to be looking at and to be monitoring,
Mm.
and to be paying attention to. And a lot of times, again, we don't focus on these local races because we're so focused on what's going on in DC. But city commission, county commission, superintendent races have a daily impact on our lives way more. By the time when something happens in DC, by the time you know it happened, when something has an impact on you, it may be weeks or months or even years later. Something happened locally, you're going to feel that instantly.
Hmm. So, thank you, Tracy, and um, One Cool Rattler, for joining the conversation, and others for joining the conversation tonight. Definitely, I wanted to mention that when we're talking about locally, we are talking about Tallahassee, Florida,
Yeah, correct,
which is
correct,
where we
correct.
are. So just want to make that for those who may not be in the area. Here's another question from for me. Um, when who made the decision, or how can we change the decision of just kind of this unlimitless times you could be in office? Like, okay, we got if you're president, you can only do 2 terms
Yeah,
because you can't come back after the 2 terms.
yeah, yeah,
If you are a governor, that's the same thing, right? Only 2 terms.
yeah. 2 terms, 2 terms, correct.
But these people that's sitting in the real seats of power, like you were just saying,
Yeah,
uh, can
yeah,
y'all get up? Can can
yeah.
we get? Because it's like just career. I'm just gonna sit in this seat, and obviously, from the way that our country looks right now, y'all not doing a good job. Y'all not. Somebody need to get fired. If I ran my job like they running this country, I'd have been gone. You would not
Yeah,
give me 10,000 years as a senator. You would not let me run that many times.
yeah.
How can I change this? Me, I want to change this. How can I?
So I will tell you, let's talk about city commission first. So there was legislation this past session to actually put a cap on the amount put a term limit on the amount of years a city commissioner, county commissioner could actually serve. And that legislation actually has been filed multiple years and has not passed the legislature because there are some pro local government Republicans in the process. And so there was an attempt by Senator Blaise Ngolia to do it 8 years, and then and at one point I mentioned doing 12 years. The bill ended up not passing. So there's been conversations about
Mm,
trying to put caps in place to create term limits, right, and get people in and out fast right now. So you can argue one way or another on the term limits, right? Term limits are good in that it keeps a revolving door. It's bad in that you lose your institutional knowledge, right? You can argue both sides, but what ends up happening is you look at it from any scale. When you don't have term limits in place, you may end up with someone who's been around for a long, long time. County commission, for example, Bill Proctor's been on the county commission for long as I've known Bill Proctor. He's been a county commissioner.
me
A
too.
county, Bill was one of my professors at FAMU, and I was pursuing my degree in political science. And he was an active professor back then, and he's been on the county commission as long as I've known him. And even when he has real opposition, he still wins handily because his constituency is just familiar with who he is. When you look at our city commission, right, or even county commissions, right, some of them run or unopposed. And some of them they do run with opponents. Their opponents either don't have the name ID or they can't raise the money to get their name out there, and so ultimately they're running unopposed with a name opponent in that regard. And then you look at in the Florida legislature, there are term limits in place, right? So our House members can only serve 8 years, right? They run every 2 years for reelection, and they cap out at 8 years. In the Senate, you do, and there's exceptions, right? You could be a red shirt where you can come in early and they're doing 9 years, something like that. In the Senate, for the most part, you're also doing 8 years. You're doing 2 4-year terms. Some of them end up getting 10 years based on redistricting, like Corey Simon, for example. Corey Simon, if Corey wins his seat, wins his election, Corey can end up doing 10 years overall. But so there are caps in place there. But if you look at it from a national, for federal perspective, these guys, they run for reelection most times unopposed, and they're there forever. And then you start seeing a lot of things take place, right? Because not only are you the creator of the laws, you're also the guarder of the books as well to make sure those laws aren't undone. And so, um, many times we aren't educated on the governing structures of our local, state, or federal government to know how this
Mhm.
stuff works out. But anytime somebody runs for office and they tell you, I don't plan on serving more than X amount of years, be cautious, be very leery of that. There are some people now who will run and they tell you, I'm gonna do 8 years, and they do 8 years and they go home, or they may do 6 and go home. But most of them want to run and keep running and keep running and keep running. Because here's the thing too, Lisa. Some people who win office were this is gonna sound offensive, but I mean it. They were the no friend, nerdy, possibly bullied kid in school. They now have a title and a little bit of power. They don't want to let that go.
Mm, mm,
They won't let it go at all. And
mm.
that's their mindset. And that's what they're going to hold fast to as much as they possibly can. The term limit fight is going to always be going on because you have like League of Cities, for example, they're going to fight against any conversation about putting term limits on city commissioners. And that's going to be a ongoing argument, especially it all depends on if Republicans are proposing term limits, you're gonna have a lot of pushback from Democrats and others against that,
Mm,
right? And so you have that going on nonstop, and um, it's also easier when you have a name ID for a long period, like a Bill Proctor, for example. I'm just using him because he's been on for a long time. When you go to the ballot, some people vote based on familiarity. I know that name, right? I don't know anything you've done, but I know that
That was
name.
a movie. Eddie Murphy did that movie.
Yeah, distinguished gentleman.
Distinguished
Right? Like
Gentleman. Yep.
I know the name, and so as
The
soon as I
name, the
recognize that name,
name
I'm
you
voting for
know.
it. Exactly, I'm just gonna vote for it. I mean, some people do that. They go in there, or you may have sent a mailer to that house. They vote based on those things, not based on policy position, not based on votes. It's based on I
Right.
recognize that name, I
Yeah.
recognize that face. I'm voting for him or her, and that's it's beyond interesting to see how this stuff plays itself out.
Yeah. So, Tracy Stallworth also had this comment, but
Yeah,
I'm not
he's
really
right.
sure
Yeah.
where and when you said that. So I just
No,
want,
he's right though. But it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset that's been created in America. He's right about that. Um, the system would work better if we actually had a desire to serve um, and then advocate for and mentor our successors. You look at that in any capacity. You can look at it in church. You can look at it in business. Looking at
yeah,
politics.
yeah,
You don't see succession plans put in place,
yeah,
right? It's like it's territorial, it's possession control. And so the only way you get rid of me is I have to die.
yeah.
There are people, I mean, literally who have been serving for 20, 30, 40 years and don't let go until death gets them.
And I get it in some respects, and I know it's a hard. Sometimes it's hard to make a hard fast rule, right? So, the thing that comes to mind is the AME Church, and at 75, you got to
Yeah,
retire.
automatic.
But there are some folk that are still really vibrant and good and making good decisions
Mhm.
and da 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 at 75.
Correct.
There are some at 65 that ain't. But so it's like, how do you it so I
That's
get
good.
so I get that there are some people who have the career as a senator or as a House of
Yeah.
Representative person, and they're doing well. It's like, how do you get rid of the folks that's not doing well? It's like, it's also like being a tenured professor.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get tenured, you coasting. We don't need you
Mm-hmm.
to coast. We need you to work.
So Lisa, here's the thing though. Um, when President Trump was president, he I don't know if he coined the phrase, but he definitely memorialized it, and the phrase was fake news, right? Whenever you said something he didn't agree with, it's fake news, and
Right.
that became the phrase people kept iterating and reiterating. Because if I don't like what you're saying, it's fake news. I don't. I'm
Hmm.
gonna dub it that way. And so now what happens is now the viewing audience now has to decide which one of you do I believe is actually accurate? Is it the reporter or is it the president? Is it fake news or not fake news? You look at it as the example you just gave. The reason why these persons keep getting reelected is because there is a population of people, there's a constituency that believe um, they're doing a good enough job, or I know what I'm getting from this person, right? It's more of a fear to vote for the unknown candidate than it is to vote for that incumbent. That incumbent may be a horrible politician, but you know what? I know what I'm getting with that person.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
person is making me all these promises, and I really believe in it. I'm really excited about that. I really want to, but when I get in that voting booth, something just
Yeah.
makes me too nervous to actually circle your name, and that's
Yeah.
why they always say it's hard to beat an incumbent, right? Because that incumbent is running off of both voting record, but also they have name ID. But the majority of the constituency is comfortable enough to keep that person in office than to roll the dice on this other person. This presidential election is going to be the tester of that because you have a former president and a current president running against each other, right? And a former president is only 4 years removed from being president. And so now it's going to be very interesting to see how um, people actually vote. And I always say this to people: I don't care about endorsements. I don't care about polls. I don't care about likability. When that person, I could say I'm for this person. But when I go in that booth
That's
and
right.
it's
You do
me and my
not know.
ballot,
That's
you have
right.
no idea who I circle for, right? And people understand that you got people who endorse in a major way.
Hmm.
The Rock endorsed
Hmm.
Biden 4 years ago. He got interviewed the other day and said, "Are you going to vote for Biden again? Endorse Biden again?" He said no. They asked him why. He said because of the amount of backlash he received. I don't know if you know this, Lisa. The Rock is the most followed person on social media.
I did not know that. I
Yes.
did. I think I saw a clip of that interview saying that he would not endorse anybody ever
He said
again.
he got so much blowback, and it also affected his brand, right? And his merchandise because people were so upset with him that he realized this is bad for business. So I'm going to keep to myself who I'm voting for.
Yeah.
But that's the other side of getting involved to the point where you have Republicans who are really worried about Taylor Swift getting involved and endorsing Biden. People are asking, what is Beyonce going to do, right? I can't point ever to a celebrity that actually determine the outcome of an election.
Mm.
I can't. But that star power, right, is interesting and it's out there. I mean, there was a lot of politicians going behind Andrew Gillum, but at the end of the day, when you go in that booth or you go and you do your absentee ballot, you don't know who I voted for. I could be at all your rallies and still vote for your opponent. And we have to understand that people ultimately going to vote based on whom they believe is going to keep their life safe, but also as normal as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so between you and me, like nobody else listening.
Yes, ma'am. I love that.
Do you think Gillum succeeded too soon?
Um, no, I don't. I really don't.
Okay.
I think say two things on that. The first thing is first don't so two things other than I don't think so. First thing though is I think people in Florida got to realize that that a good percentage of Floridians are nervous of progressive Democrats. a good percentage of Floridians. They're nervous of progressive Democrats because it's some of them feel like it's unpredictable. It makes them nervous. There was a lot of love for Andrew Gillum, even from people that were not Democrats. There were
Yeah.
people who were expecting him to win this. So the first thing is that. Second thing, though, I think when you have races like that one, you got to do everything right. You are a minority male who won out in your field when you should not have. He was the least funded of all of them. He won. He ran a very major race. But if you look at Andrew going back to when he ran for city commission the first time, Andrew's always been very strategic. He had a
Hmm.
"Ride with Five" campaign slogan when he ran for city commission. He's always been able to win with a lean, very focused campaign, right? So people took him for granted. But when they became to him, so it's no longer me against four people. Now it's me against one other person. Everything now is under criticism, under critique, under the eye. And so also it comes down to one item becomes a deciding factor, right? In
Mm,
that race, school choice became a major factor for certain
mm,
people because Andrew was so bricks and mortar public school, right? And he made a comment. I can't remember exactly how the comment went, but people view that as he was going to undo the tax credit scholarship, and
mm,
that made some black mothers very concerned. And because guess what, when you black churches that have schools, most of those kids are on that scholarship, right? And so
mhm.
you have so all of a sudden those items really are effective. I'll give you another thing that I think one thing I've always felt like really hurt Andrew's campaign, and it wasn't Andrew himself per se. I think it was is that if you look at the other Democrats that were running for AG, for CFO, and for ag, they were weak candidates. What the Democratic Party did, in my view, is they hitched all of their wagons to Andrew's wagon. So now,
Mm.
not only am I trying to carry myself to the finish line, I'm now trying to carry these opponents. And so
Uh,
now, when I was running as one of five Democratic nominees for the gubernatorial, when everything by myself and no one was giving me any help, now I become this. I'm the face now of the party. I'm the hope for everybody. And all of a sudden, you want everybody else's race to be attached to mine. So now, at all of my stump speeches, I got to give all of them 5 minutes to say something before I come up there, right? And so now my crowd is now being worn down by these individuals who we all know have no chance to win. Mine is Nikki Free, have no chance to win. So all of a sudden now he's having to carry the weight
mm,
of other races as well. And if you look at what he did in the primary, in the general, it was two different campaigns because the party now is saying we need you to help us get them over the finish line as well. And instead of them putting all of their stock into getting the governor's office, they were trying to get all four cabinet seats. Not going to work out that way. You got to figure out what is the most important one you want and put everything in that way. And sometimes you have candidates who run who should not run for other seats, but they did. And I guess I get that, but I don't think it was too soon for him at all. And up until really days before the election, every poll had him winning,
yeah,
and everybody assumed he was going to win.
yeah. I know
And
I did.
even to the point where some of his people actually were already measuring the drapes and interviewing people for jobs and things of that nature. They thought they were going to win, but that's why you also run the race to the end of the race,
Yeah,
right? You don't. I rather you lose with no money than win. I rather you win with no money than lose and still have money,
yeah.
right? Like you got to put everything on. You got to put everything out there. You got to spend it all and try to win, go big. And I think looking back on it, they definitely could have done some things differently. And as a guy like me, who's a political scientist, who look at these things through the lens of politics, not through the lens of ideology, everything they did really, really well. There's something they did. I would say they need to do differently. Um, and you get that close, man. You're like, wow.
So when I get ready to run for president, would you be my campaign manager? I'm
I
just
would
saying.
not. I would not. But I would listen. I'm more of a political advisor now than I'm a campaign man. I don't do managing. I do more the advising and the behind the scenes stuff. Um,
Okay, but you'll be on
because
my team though.
yeah, I'd be happy to. Like I'm more of that than I am the campaign manager. You need to have to me. You need to have. I'm very self aware. I'm not a campaign manager,
Okay.
but I am definitely a strategist. I'm definitely an advisor, right? Like I was watching Shirley. Can't be the driver.
Can you drive? Can he drive? You know him? Can he drive?
Yeah, he can drive. Yeah, Pastor Star Wars, good people. He can do that. And I'll tell you, I mean, when you watch the Shirley movie, right? Like she had people around her
She did.
that they knew their lane, they knew their
Yep,
roles,
absolutely.
and ultimately she gonna do what she wants to do. My job is to advise you and show you the pros and the cons. And if you do this, it's gonna happen. You need those people, not people who don't always sing along what you want to hear.
Right,
And
right, right,
ultimately, you got to make the decision because it's your candidacy, it's your race, it's your face that's out there. And I just think,
right.
yeah,
Yes, I think even though I knew about Shirley Chisholm, of course, just seeing that movie inspires me. And I remember as a little girl, that was one of my dreams is to be the president of the United
yeah,
States.
I respect that dream.
I don't know. It might have to come back around
I
because
respect that dream.
somebody got to clean up this mess.
I respect that. I do.
Oh my goodness. Listen, thank you guys for watching. This has
Yes,
been
ma'am.
Kitchen Talk CTC. Thank you, Pastor Darrick D. McGhee, Sr. Appreciate you so much. My guys were out tonight. So shout out to Fransley Moyes and JT Plummer. Hopefully they'll be hanging out with me next week. I'm not sure what we're talking about, but I'm sure it'll be on fire like it was tonight. As always, because this kitchen gets really hot.
There you go.
It gets really hot. So I appreciate you so much, Pastor D, for sharing your insight with us. I love when you come on because you have such great things to say, even though I'm in here like, I don't want to talk about politics ever again.
Indeed.
But I am definitely inspired by Miss Lenora, who will be 104 this year. I appreciate her so
awesome.
much. She has inspired me. I'm gonna keep it on with this voting thing. We got one more comment. Let's see.
Oh, look at that. One for Gaston
One for
County.
Gaston County.
Yeah.
All right, Pastor D, we might have to have you back a little sooner than later, so you could. I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
I think too. Yeah, we do need to talk locally and see if and see what's what and do some local talks with Kitchen Talk. I have no problem with it at all. Maybe some special sessions. I don't know if you're interested in that. Let me know your schedule and we could see if we could work some out. We can have some special voting. France would love that because this is his favorite topic.
Exactly.
But thank you guys for joining us. So if you are watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you turn on your notifications so you will never miss another show. If you are watching us on Facebook, hit the like button. But also remember to turn on those notifications so you'll always see what's going on in the kitchen. Thank you so very much again, Pastor D, for hanging out. This has been Kitchen Talk CTC, Conversations That Cook, and we are going to see you guys next Thursday right here at 9:00, same place, same bat station. Good night. Good
night, everyone.
Good night.
Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Let's talk. What you wanna talk about? Kitchen Talk.